Hey there! So you want to make a 3D character, specifically in Blender, but you have searched around and none of those videos helped you at all? Yeah, I have been through the same thing for the past 3 years. So I decided to make a full series teaching how to make a character for animations all in Blender. From drawing the model sheet to the very final part of rendering the final result. Welcome to the Character in Blender, a tutorial series. So, before we jump in, let's go over some really important points to ensure you get the most out of these tutorials. Knowledge level in Blender. This series assumes that you have basic knowledge of Blender, like how to add and remove objects, how to rotate, how to scale, how to move around, and some other basic things. We will not be starting from the very absolute zero, so make sure you are familiar with Blender's interface and some basic shortcuts. Though, I will be giving you some tips on how to use Blender throughout the whole series. I will make sure to have screencast enabled during all the tutorials so that you can know what are the keys that I'm pressing and what I am exactly doing. I am teaching some little shortcuts and things on Blender on this minute of this video. So if you do not know much about Blender, you can watch this little tutorial that I made so that you can get used to the tools that we're going to be using throughout the tutorials. The main focus. The series will be following this path: model sheet, blocking, sculpting, retopology, rigging, UV mapping, texturing, creating clothes, posing, but as a bonus, we will also be seeing viewport, object mode settings, camera, lights, environment for HDR sky and procedural skies, video file format, and rendering with Workbench, Eevee, and Cycles. Having that said, our focus through the videos is going to be on creating a character for animations all in Blender, specifically low poly and stylized cartoon characters, so that by the end of the series, you will have your very own character ready to be animated as you want. As instance, I will be crafting Felix Lovejoy, my original character from the late 1800s, meaning that he's a human male character. Then, having a basic understanding of human anatomy will be beneficial. And by the way, speaking in original characters, let's talk about art style. Art style. We all know that each artist has their own very unique art style, and this series will help you develop or refine yours. If you have been an artist for the past few years like me, and you already have an art style, that'll be great. You will make sure to import your 2D style to the 3D world. While drawing skills are helpful, they're not mandatory. You can follow my steps and then adjust them to suit your style. But if you do not have your own style, do not worry. You can pick one that resonates with you or develop one that you like the most as you follow along. Having a style in mind when creating a character is essential and will make things easier and clearer. But, as I said, if you do not have a style, how can you get one? Well, probably with references. References. They are crucial for guiding our character creation process in this initial part. And I want you to look for 3D character references online that match your art style or personal taste. Whether you prefer realistic or cartoonish, find references that align with your vision, your taste in styles, or the style of your character. This last one is referring to bodies, heads and faces, style, and some other things. Here is my personal example. I have my own art style, which is cartoonish, and I wanted to keep my 2D style in my 3D style. So I went for cartoonish characters that matched with my taste and with my style. These are the references that I used to get this style. And this is the path that I followed. I looked for references for a while on Google, Instagram, Pinterest, Pixels, and etc. After a while, I sketched the head and torso with the front and side view on paper. And then I drew the same drawing on digital and used as a model sheet to sculpt the head, which I was using as a prototype to see if the style that I got would look good in 3D. After seeing it was okay, I digitally drew the entire character's body, creating a model sheet. And only after that I started to craft my 3D model. Take your time and get as many references as necessary. Gears. Now, talking about some more specific things, let's talk about the tools that we will be using. I will be using Blender 3D with a version 3.6.1 from 2023, but you can follow the same process pretty much in any version. I started in Blender 3 years ago with a 2.8 version, and it has not changed my process at all. As for the drawings, I will be using Pencil Sci, but you can draw anywhere. You can draw on other programs like Photoshop, Creative, Clips, and even on your phone, using Imps Paint or any other app. You can also draw on paper, just make sure to take a photo of it. Whereas for digital, I recommend you to use a graphic tablet if possible. We will be using it to draw, to sculpt, and to make some textures in the future. My graphic tablet is the Galmon S620. It does not have a screen. I have heard that tablets with a screen are better for 3D sculpting, but I have never had one. As you can imagine, it is not mandatory to use a graphic tablet. I had been making drawings and 3D sculptures with my laptop's mouse for nearly 3 years before buying my first graphic tablet. Brief tutorial. Before starting, I want to say that if you skipped it to this part of this video, stop. You have to listen to the other things that I have to say because they are important. If it was not, I would not be making this whole video. But if you follow the entire video, we can start working on Blender for now just a bit, with a short tutorial about general things about this software. If you do not know how to use and navigate on Blender, do not worry. Here I will show you some really cool tools that we are going to be using. So, the first thing that you're gonna be seeing when you open a new Blender file is this thing here. This is called the splash screen. I'm not gonna be going to it, but one of the cool stuff that it does is seeing the recent files that you can choose to use. But I'm not gonna be talking about it. You can just click somewhere else that it's gonna disappear. So let's start. It's gonna be a really simple tutorial about the Blender's interface and how to use it. So as we can see, we are in the layout window, which is the basic window. And here we have a panel with some tools to use, but right now they are not necessary. So I'm gonna be pressing T to hide them. After we hit it, in the other side we have some really cool stuff, which is this thing here that I have no idea how to call. But if you click on it with the left button of the mouse and rotate, then we can rotate and see the things around on the workspace of Blender. We can also click in one of these balls here, like -Y to see the front view, X to see the side, Z to see the top, and basically that. You can also use the wheel of the mouse to move around, so you just have to click on the wheel and move it around. It's the same thing. Here, it's the zoom. You can hold with the left mouse and then zoom out and zoom in, but we can do that with the wheel of the mouse too. And here, this little hand, if you click with the left mouse, hold and move around, you can also move around like this. Really cool. But we can also do that by pressing Shift and then wheel of the mouse. And this little button here is for the camera, but I'm not gonna be going to the camera right now. And here is to change the perspective. So this is one type of perspective, and if you click here, we have another type of perspective. I usually use this one here, which is the normal one. The other one is orthographic, but you can choose. So as we can see, we have a cube, we have a little dot, which is the light, and we have this little thing here that is really weird, which is the camera. If we press right click on mouse, set active camera, we can see the things from the camera point of view. But we can also do that by pressing 0 on the numpad. Numpad is this little part of the keyboard. Here we have a cube, here we have a light, and this is the viewport display, like without being rendered. Down here we can place the mouse cursor in this line until we have this format, and then we can just drag it up. And this is the timeline for the animations. We're not gonna be going to this right now too, but as we can see, we have 250 frames here. You can change this value to less or more according to the animation, but we're not going to be going to this. So I'm just gonna be dragging it down and hide it. Now on this side here, we have an area where we can see the objects of our scene. So like this is the light, which is this object. This is the cube, which is this object. This is the camera, which is this object. And if you have more than objects, you can search around and even rename them to make things more organized. This is a collection. These 3 objects are inside this collection. Collections are basically folders in Blender. I don't know why they call it collection instead of folder. And you can just move certain objects to inside collections, or folder if you want to call it like that, to make things more organized too. So you can create a collection, a folder, only for lights, another collection only for cameras, another collection only for objects like characters, shapes like a cube or spheres, and so on. This little part here is probably one of the most confusing one. This top one is the render, where we can choose the render engines, which we have Eevee, Workbench, and Cycles. And all of these other settings are settings that we can change to improve the final render. I'm not going to be going to this. I'm going to be going to this in the final video, which is going to be a bonus. So let's just keep going. This here is also for renders. We can change the format of the video or of the photo. We can change the frame rate, output, where it's going to be saving in your computer, and some other settings too. This one we don't usually use. I don't usually use this one too. This one, well, is for changing the world, like you can change the color of the sky and even add a texture, which is going to be doing in the final video too. This one I don't usually use too. This one, object, it's something cool, like you can select one object and change like the visibility, like you can change the way it looks like, but I'm not going to be going to this. And here, the coolest part, modifiers. We can add modifiers to objects to make things more good looking. We can add a mirror modifier, which is going to be mirroring both sides of one object. We can add a subdivision surface modifier, which is going to be giving more polygons and making things smoother. Like if we select this cube and go into add modifier and select subdivision surface, this is what happens. It gives more faces and more subdivisions to the object. But if we press this button here to hide it, we can see that actually it doesn't change the real object. It's just like a mask, you know? So that's basically what it does. And we have several modifiers here, as you can see. This part is for particles. I'm not going to be using it. This part is for simulations like collision, cloth, but I'm not going to be going to this too. This one, object constraints. We are not going to be using this throughout the videos. This one we're going to be using, but I can explain it later in the next videos because I'm going to be going to this little part here a lot in the next videos. And this one here is for materials. We can create and edit materials to give colors and aspects and texture to our character, or basically any other objects. And this part here is for editing images. It's really simple, but we're not going to be using them throughout the course. And now we can select the cube and we can press delete on keyboard. So now we deleted this object. And to add another object, we can press Shift A. And then we have a lot of options here, like lights, camera, speaker, and many others. I'm going to be going to mesh, and here in the meshes, I'm going to be selecting the mesh of the type cube. So now we added a new cube, totally different from the old one. As you can see, this is completely different. Absolutely. And so that's how we delete and add objects. I'm going to be moving my cursor to this area and pressing A. So it's going to be selecting everything. And here I'm going to be pressing delete. So it's going to delete all of the objects and the folder too. Now I'm going to be adding another mesh, Shift A, mesh, and I'm going to be creating a monkey. This is Blender's monkey. She's called Suzanne. I don't know why they call the monkey like Suzanne, but that's okay. Now I'm going to be teaching some real shortcuts. To move the objects around, we can press G and simply move it around like this. And if you press G and Y, we're going to be moving the object only on the Y-axis, like this. Same thing for the X and Z axis. In this case, Y is for the front and back, X is for the sides, and Z is for up and down. So G, X, we can move it to the sides only on X, and G, Z, we can move only up and down. To rotate an object, we can just press R, and it's going to be rotating like this. But if you press R twice, we can rotate it in a different way. This is pressing Y only once. This is what happens. And this is what happens when you press R twice. We can move it like this in a more free way. And we can also lock the rotation on X, Y, and Z, just like we did with moving. So RX is going to be rotating only on X. RY is going to be only rotating on Y. RZ is going to be rotating only on Z. Now to scale up and scaling down objects, like to make it bigger or smaller, we only need to press S. We can scale it up or scale it down. And remember, we can lock the things too, so we can lock the scale. We can press S, X, and scale only to the sides like this. We can also press S, Z, and scale it up only on Z. S, Y, the same thing. Now let's do one little thing. I'm gonna be moving this up like this, rotating a bit like this, and scale it up just a bit too. And we can see if we press Alt D, Alt R, and Alt S, it is going to go back to the form that it was before we changed it. So I'm going to be pressing Ctrl Z, Ctrl Z, Ctrl Z, and this is the way we changed it. We move it around, we scale it, and we rotate it. And to apply these modifications to the mesh, so when we press Alt D, Alt R, and Alt S, it's gonna stay in this position, in this rotation, in the sides. So we need to press Ctrl A and apply the transforms. We can apply the location, we can apply the rotation, the scale, and all transforms, which is gonna be all of this. So I'm gonna be pressing all transforms. And after that, the origin of the object, which is this little origin dot here, is gonna be set to the center of the space of the world. But to keep the origin of the object inside the object, we need to select the object, of course, press right on mouse, and then set origin to geometry. And now the origin, which is the orange dot, is going to be inside the mesh. There are some really cool stuff in Blender called add-ons, and we can turn on some of them. And for that, we're going to be turning on just one, which is going to be one for images. And we need to turn on the add-on. And to do that, we just need to go in this part here, Edit, click on it, and we go into Preferences. In Preferences, we're going to be going to the add-ons, and here we're going to be searching for image. And then Import, Export, import image as planned. Make sure to enable this like this, and then go down here, save preferences, and now we can import images as planes, like an object that is going to be rendered, because the normal images in Blender, like if I add a little image here, it's not going to be appearing in the final render. But with that add-on, we can turn this little image as a plane, as an object, and then render it. It's gonna be necessary for the next video when using the model sheet. Now let's talk about the viewport modes. This viewport right here is this object solid mode. We don't have lights and we don't have textures. So if we go to this part here, we can go to the wireframe part, where it's going to be showing the wires of the object like this. This is transparent, but we can turn off the transparency by clicking on here. This is not transparent anymore. And if we press in this part here, viewport shading is gonna be a part where it's gonna be showing some texture and some lights. As we can see, our monkey is completely white because it doesn't have a texture, but if you added a texture, it would be appearing and showing up here. And then after that, there's this little option here, which is the render preview. This is gonna be the render mode, or at least the preview of it. As we can see, it is completely dark because there is no light and there is no background. So I'm going to be giving just a little example. I'm going to be pressing Shift A. I'm going to go into Light, Point, and I'm going to be moving this light around by pressing G. We can see that there's a light, but it is too low. It is not strong enough to let the object enough. To change that, we can go into the data part, light and power. We can increase the number to 50. This already makes things much more This already makes things much more lit. This is just an example, but if we had to render this image, this would be showing up like this with no background and only in a monkey with just one little light. This is really boring, but the final render of our character is going to be different from this. And another thing that we can change are the modes of the object. If we go up here, we can see that this is the object mode. We are seeing the normal view with no textures and just the object mode. But if we click here, we can see that we have many others. So I'm going to be changing object mode to edit mode, which is going to be a mode that is going to be allowing us to edit the object. And now we can see that some things changed, such as these little dots. These dots, I'm going to be selecting one, and you can see that we can move them around. So this is going to be changing the format of the mesh. So this is one way of editing the mesh in the edit mode by changing the vertices. This second option right here is the edges, which selects one edges of the object, like this, this, and this. And we can change the shape of the object too by doing this. And this last one is selecting faces. And what it does, it basically selects faces like this, and we can change around. And we can do the same thing, move around, scale it down, rotate, same thing. Now, if we press T, we're gonna be having all of these options here. They are really confusing, so I'm not going to be going into all of them. I'm just going to be teaching you some real stuff. If we press Ctrl R, we're going to be having this little thing here. So if I press my cursor in this side of the object, it's going to be creating a loop cut around the entire side of the object, just like this. And then if I move my cursor around, it's going to be creating a loop cut here, or even maybe here. I'm going to be creating in the middle just to show you. Left click on mouse, now we can move it up and move it down. Left click on mouse again. And now we created a loop cut for the mesh. This can be necessary for creating more shape to the mesh, like we can scale it up or scale it down. We can rotate it like this, and many other things. I'm going to be creating one more here too, another here. And now we have more faces and more subdivisions for the mesh. And to select an entire loop, I'm going to be pressing Alt and clicking in one of these edges. Now we selected the entire loop, like this. To move the loops, we can press D, like this, and then Y to move them around like this. Or we can press D twice to move them in a locked position, like this. Same thing for the vertices. We can move them like this by pressing D twice. And even faces. But faces usually are weird to move like this, so it's not a good idea. We also have the extrude option. So I'm going to be selecting this face here, and I'm going to be pressing E to extrude a new face up. So I'm going to be pressing E and Z, and it's going to be extruding a new thing just like this. I'm going to be extruding again, E, Z, and then I'm going to be selecting this face here, and then I'm going to be selecting this face here, and then I'm going to be pressing E, Y. I'm going to be selecting this face here and move it to the side, so I'm going to be pressing G, X. It looks like a hand pointing up. And this is basically how it works to edit meshes in Blender and in other softwares. We can extrude faces, move vertices around, and create shapes that we want. In this case, we're going to be creating a character. But this is the basics that we're going to be using. And so, to change in between faces, edges, and vertices, instead of going up here and clicking, we can just press 1 on keyboard to choose the vertices, 2 to choose the edges, and 3 to choose the faces. So instead of going up here and choose them manually, we can just press 1 or 2 or 3 to quickly change in between the options. Now, our object has much more polygons, and maybe there's some mistakes where I create some extra vertices. And these extra vertices can cause trouble in the future. And to remove them, we have to press 1 on the keyboard and then the letter M. Here's going to be showing up this option, and to remove the extra vertices, we just have to click by distance. In my case, it didn't have any extra vertices, so we removed none. but it can happen in another models where it has much more polygons and maybe it creates an extra vertex that can cause trouble. And to remove it, you just have to press M to merge and then by distance. And as for the mouse, I taught you how to move around like this, how to move around like this too, how to zoom in and how to zoom out. But this is with a normal mouse of a PC that it really looks like a mouse, you know? But we also can have the mouse of a laptop, which is like the touch. And we can do the same things. You can do it by using these tools here if you want. I used to do it. But we can also use a more quick way, which is using 2 fingers. If you put 2 fingers in the mouse of the laptop, you can move it around like this. And if you press Shift and then 2 fingers on the mouse, we can move it like this. And to zoom in and zoom out, we can just do it in the same way as we do in our phones to see photos. So zoom in with 2 fingers and zoom out with 2 fingers too. And now, one last tip, I'm gonna be showing you how to save the file because we created, let's pretend that we created a character and this is the final character, but we have to save the file or else we're gonna be losing it. And to save the file, it's pretty easy. We just have to press Ctrl S, choose a place in our computer to save the file. I'm gonna be saving in the desktop, and then we can rename the file. I'm gonna rename this as, I don't know. This is an amazing name for the file. And after rename the file, we can just save Blender file by pressing here. And now our file is saved on our computer and we can just press twice to open the same file without losing it. But let's say that we added another object and we changed some stuff in our file. We need to save it again. And to do that, we just have to press Ctrl S and it's going to be saving automatically. And with that, we wrap this introductory video. Now that you are equipped with the knowledge and tools that we'll be using throughout this series, it is time to dive into the exciting world of character creation in Blender. Stay tuned for the next episode, where we'll be starting by drawing the character's model sheet. I hope that this series is going to be useful to someone, and make sure to subscribe so that you do not miss this series. Like the video and share with your friends that also want to start making 3D characters. Also, follow Dallery Studios on the other social media. Behance, Instagram, TikTok, X, Twitter, and others. Make sure to see my indie project 13 Tapes as well. All links are in the description and on LINKSTACK. Thanks for watching and I will see you in the next video. Bye!